Hello everyone, BMI here back with the latest scoop on the top decks from BSF Duluth. So the meta has progressed once again. We've seen a lot of Hero Sword, we've seen a lot of Discard Dragon. But before I get into the top deck list from the top 3 teams of the event, I want to give a quick shout out to our Patreon. So thank you very much to Giraffe for supporting us. And also we have a bunch of Patreon exclusive releases. So we've got BPO for Beauty and the Beast Forest Guide, which I think is secretly one of the strongest decks of the format. Got an Open 8 guide coming out soon, and also coaching raffles. So at the moment, each of our various tiers get coaching if they win the raffle. And because there's no one in the supporter or the young cat enthusiast tier, if you sign up for that, you basically are guaranteed to win coaching. So that closes on the 20th of June. So make sure to check that out. I don't do coaching via any other formats, so it's the only way to get coaching from me. Okay, cool. So the only other thing is that we also have an Uma guide coming. So if you want to play Uma, like me, then definitely check that out too. Cool. So, Discard Dragon. This is a very, very standard deck list. In fact, it's got no BPO4 cards. It's literally the same as it was in previous expansions. Evidently, it's still a strong deck if, you can run literally 0 new cards. So it plays very similarly to before. They're running 2 copies of Dragon Tamer just for a bit of extra tempo, and also Cycle. So not really much to say about this particular deck list. You've seen it in previous formats. Hero Sword. So this one does run a few new BPO4 cards, primarily Perseus as a 2/2, and then also 2 copies of Armor of Stars, which gives you aura and stats. And the last one is Mars. So Mars is another new addition to the deck. So basically, you can evolve it on turn 4, and you get any 1-cost follower, including Quick Blader, and it's just 2 damage to face. And then, your opponent kind of has to deal with this with the tempo. So, yeah, Hero Sword, definitely something that you would expect to see in the current meta. Mid-range Forest. So this is, of course, a tier 1 deck, which everyone expects to see. It's a pretty standard list from what I can tell. The only thing that they run a little bit differently is they run 2 copies of IP Spellbound. So this means that, it's a good answer to Ancient Elf in particular, because it does 5 damage. And in the late game, it does 3 burn damage. So, in order to fit that in, they've cut the Castios down or the Silver Bolts. But, overall, it's a fine card. A lot of people run 1 copy usually. Okay, moving along to Giant Chimera Rune. So this one here, Spellboost got a really big buff in this expansion with Giant Chimera. So, usually they run like a 2 split of like Daria and Giant Chimera to get the combo. But I think what this person has decided on is that they don't want to rely on Daria in order to get the 30 damage OTK. It actually feels like they're playing a bit more of a tempo game plan. So, you get to turn 7, you play this, does AoE damage, they have to clear it, and if they don't, you can kill them with 7 damage to face. Alternatively, you just kind of keep processing their board over and over again, and eventually get the burn damage for lethal. So, definitely an interesting build of Giant Chimera. It's a little different from what we usually see. We also see Control Abyss, so this is another new deck from the format. So it follows very similar to the Vancouver list. I think they cut the Rice Showers, but instead they're running 3 copies of Fine Motion, which helps you to mill, and it also heals your leader. So the game plan is exactly the same as before. You mill all of the cards in, and then you get an OTK after you get the Zazel. So Demon Lord Ektar, boom, do so much damage. So moving along, PDK. So this one's a bit more of an interesting list. So this is a pure aggressive list. So it runs all of the Valley followers early game. It's not even running Forte, actually. But it is running 2 copies of Genesis Dragon to cap out the curve. So I think the idea is you dominate the early game, you do a lot of damage to the leader, and then just when they think they've stabilized, nobody expects 10 damage from Genesis Dragon. So I think that's kind of how his deck operates. And you will notice this deck only costs $36. So this is by far the cheapest deck I've seen in a very long time. I think literally all you need is like a starter deck, and then you just go and ask friends for like spare commons or rares. That's literally your deck. I think the only expensive card, and it's not even that expensive, is 3 Civil. I think that's like $15 over 36 right here. So yeah, definitely an interesting list. Can deck that pretty easily or give it to your friends. Hero Sword. So again, this is from the winners team. So let's see. They're running the Mars package yet again, and they're capping it out with Albert. There's no Leo, as you might notice. But yeah, it's not too different from the other list. They are running 3 copies of Luminous Knight, so this card remains extremely strong against decks like Dragon in particular that don't have an easy way to do AoE damage. But it does have a slight weakness against Forest in particular due to Elfchild May, but nevertheless still a decent pick. And then we've got Discard Dragon. So this one is running new cards, so they're running 2 copies of the Dragon New Fist. So when it's discard, you can put in the X. But you can cast it anytime to do 3 damage to an enemy follower, which is not bad, given that it's kind of free. And then Star Phoenix is another new addition, so this is almost like infinite value, if you want to say, put it that way. So while it's in a cemetery, you can pay 1 mana when a dragon spell is played, and then it brings it back to the field. So it's just this persistent threat that keeps coming back over and over again, and your opponent will almost feel obligated to clear it. And if they don't clear it, then the next turn you evolve it, and it does 2 damage to an enemy from the field when it does a strike. So it's allowed to kind of go face while kind of answering the opponent's board. So apart from that, it's a pretty standard list. It's just kind of those 2 new cards. And then the last deck, I believe we have Midrange Forest. So from Bowstone Sync, he's a prominent community member. He has his own YouTube channel, so make sure to check that out. But I think the main thing that he's changed with his deck list is, first of all, he's running Floral Breeze for the bounce, but I think that's also due to the fact that he's running 3 copies of Tweedledum and Tweedledee. So when this card evolves, it basically allows you to search the top 4 cards of your deck for a 1-cost play point card. And so I think partially it's just to up the ratio on that. I'm not really sure his reasoning for not wanting to run 3 Spring Green Protection, because that could be the alternative 1-cost card apart from Floral Breeze, but I think it is a common kind of choice to do 2 instead of 3. It's just depending on the playstyle, I think. And aside from that, it's a pretty standard list. There's not that much room for experimentation within Midrange Forest. So overall, it's a pretty good lineup. I mean, Dragon, Sword, and Forest. Congratulations to them for winning the Bahamut. And then after that, we might also go through the other BSF event that was in the week previous. So that one, I think they didn't get enough players to get a 3v3 event. So instead, it was just a 9-player, 1v1 event. So the third place deck, they ran Aggro Abyss. So Aggro Abyss, it's a pretty standard list. I mean, yeah, they run all the standard kind of 1-cost followers, but also they're running kind of in the top end. They're running like, Howling Demon, Dark Alice, Righteous Devil, all of this type of stuff that does a huge amount of damage in the late game. So nothing too out of the ordinary there, and of course, very cheap deck. Next one is Midrange Forest. So the only interesting things, I think, were 2 Surefire Bullet. You don't see this very often, but it does shoot stuff like, Floral Fencer or, Alice and stuff like that. It's running 2 copies of Rapunzel, so I don't think they run any ways of actually giving this a Fable counter, but I think they literally run it because it's a 3-cost 4/5 ward. So imagine, like, you have stuff hiding behind this. Your opponent has no choice but to clear this, right? And there's not that many ways of clearing it outside of, say, Dragon or Egg. Like, these are the only ways of, like, getting efficient 5 damage, so I can kind of see what they're going for here. And then they're also running 2 copies of Suzuka for the additional poke damage, with 2 copies of Silver to kind of cap everything out. So a bit of a heavy list, but they do run a few more defensive options. But yeah, it's an interesting list overall. And then the final deck was Musume, so this came first place. This list is a lot more aggressive than the other list, so you can see that they're running 3 copies of Miyano Top Gun, so you can play this in turn 1 against every deck other than Forest usually. It just does 2 damage repeatedly, can clear 4 health followers in the mid-late game. And they're also running 3 copies of Sand Sky, so this just keeps hitting face over and over again. And they're running 2 copies of the My Solo Drawn to Raindrop Drums, so it's very good against Forest. You just hold this against King Elephant, and they can't OTK you. And then they're running 7 centimeters ahead, or 7 more centimeters in English. So basically this card just means that you never lose to control. And this is particularly good against Ramp Dragon, which is probably the most common control deck you'll see. But yeah, they cap it out with the standard endgame curve, which is 2 Guri and 1 Narita Brian. So it's interesting to see like the differences in meta between Vancouver and Duluth. So you'll notice that Ramp Dragon wasn't really played in this event. It was actually just Discard Dragon, whereas Ramp Dragon is quite popular in Vancouver. So I don't know if it's necessarily kind of a a meta thing, or if they've kind of just thought this card dragon is better. But we just have to wait and see to fully determine which dragon deck is the superior list. So that is it for me for this time. I'm going to be uploading a bunch of matches from online tournaments. So the next one will be Musume. And then also there'll be a guide coming out on the Patreon. So make sure to check that out if you're interested. And again, yeah, June 20th, I think. Sorry, May 20th is when raffles will close for this month. So if you're on the list, you will be able to potentially win coaching from me. And that's it. I'll see you guys next time.